Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pixel Classroom Podcast. Thank you for joining us here tonight here on this wonderful Sunday night for the audio recordings here, too. Sorry for a couple of delays. We got good here. And with that, I don't want to waste any time with my amazing returning guest here. He's a pretty well-known educator. You know, he was known as a graduate assistant football coach, but learning about leadership and teaching very well, too. And then, of course, his wife decided he should be in education. And as a result, the world was never the same again. And he's co-founded, of course, a wonderful thing known as the EduProtocols. And of course, I am a huge user of that too. And I'd like to welcome back to the Pixel Classroom Podcast, the one and only Jon Corippo. And there he is. Hey,
hello.
John.
Hey, Ryan. How you doing?
I'm not too bad. I know we had a little couple things here, but otherwise, you know, it was kind of a nice day. So we kind of were organizing the house, setting up St. Patrick's Days and Easter. We kind of do that double little meg in here. So house is clean, decluttered, and looking like a combination of Irish meets the Easter Bunny right now.
Well, we spent we're building a little first house for our daughter. It's like 670 square feet. So
oh wow,
that was our family time today. We were getting all the kitchen lined out and working on light fixtures and stuff like that. So
oh, that's actually pretty amazing. As somebody who's known about working on a house, yeah, it can be quite the piece here, but that's really nice that, you know, you got that going on, daughter. You know, meanwhile, my son just wants to make sure I can let him have his downloads on his PS5 right now. So, you know,
there you go.
It's building in different communities at a different
That's
time.
right. But it's the same global idea.
Exactly. And on that note, speaking of global, so John, why don't you introduce those for our returning listeners who might have, I don't know how, forgotten about who you are and what is the EduProtocol?
So EduProtocols are basically lesson frames, if you would. So I think a lot of times people, if I said, Ryan, we're going to teach ancient Greece, you would think I need these 17 worksheets or these 3 workbooks or this textbook with these assignments. And then now it's going to be very focused about ancient Greece, which means it's the first time the kids have done the work, right? So the easiest way to explain EduProtocols is probably there's something akin to a Venn diagram. What grade level? All.
Right.
What subject area? Oh, how often do you do them? We do them better every day. So imagine like in an EduProtocols, like most people, if they do a Venn diagram with 6th graders, they feel like retiring if they can get the kid to put 3 things in each column. Is that a fair statement? Like if they'll put 3 things in each column, they're like, yeah, that's great. Well, with EduProtocols, that would have been the first week of school. By this time of year with EduProtocols, they'd have 2 and 3 parentheticals. They would have 4 to 7 things in each column. They would have pictures in each column, and they would be able to write an expository narrative or, let's say, argumentative paragraph using what they made. So protocols are just like this machine. You just keep churning and churning, and you go right through early man, and then boom, now we're into ancient Egypt, and then boom, we hit Greece, and we just roll right on through till Rome. And we've got about, I think about 80 or 90 official protocols now, but basically being able to do the work product is basically the same every day. So the kids get faster and faster and faster.
Yeah, and it's amazing how that's worked. I mean, I've been using the EduProtocols ever since, I have a little something. People who are in our video here can see about John wearing a wonderful Dave Burgess consulting shirt, which of course, as many people know here, I probably own a majority of the libraries and then some and everything. But there's the book that changed it all right there, the EduProtocols Field Book 1 and then 2, and of course the Deploying Field Guide, which definitely for somebody who went into instructional coaching, which luckily finally got the certification. But I have to say though, John, your protocols have worked best. I mean, I ended up teaching business law for the first time ever. It was the first time in 7 years my school actually taught it, and I I constantly go, not just the Facebook
Yeah.
group, I constantly go back to these books, and I've done everything from one. Believe it or not, I'm trying to figure out what happened to my math edition, but I've also gone, of course, to the history edition quite a few times, just helping me here. But it's amazing how much EduProtocols really engage the students. It's getting them to the systems, and it's
Mhm.
just been how we've been building everything. Because right now we're about to start Unit 2 on Tuesday. We're going to local versus state versus national versus international. But what we've built with our different law policies for everything now from internet going to our local, it's just been fantastic of how it's worked so well. And many of my students have taken up on it, really. Those who have been absent from class are really able to just jump right back into it very simply.
Well, and that's you're like a great example of this because, it works in any subject. So since you already knew some protocols, here you are in a first year edition of a class, and you're like, no problem, that's a cyber sandwich. No problem, that's an Iron Chef. No problem, that's a sketch and tell. And that's the beauty of it is you're not always trying to drag up something on TPT or a worksheet or something. You are literally able to just grab and mix and match, and that is really, really fun.
And it's really interesting too, like your most recent one that just came out here, which of course is, and I got it right here for the video here, and I'll stop sharing that so people can see the video here. But right here, the field Kai for TK through 2, or as I said in my book, through PK through 2, because I'm used to I'm a certified PK through 22 level
Yes,
educator. Somehow I
I
did.
love it.
But there were so many things. I was like, boy, where was this 6 years ago when I was using Seesaw on my my kindergartners and my second graders, because there was so much we could have done. And like I was using, but they're like, oh, here's a template and everything. But there's so many additions right now. I know the ELA is coming down the line very
Yep.
soon, which I have 2 English teachers that are like ready to jump into it. So just so you got people buyers there. But what interests, I mean, Benjamin Cogswell and Jennifer Dean ended up doing this edition, but each, you're in this, and so's Marlena and everything. But really, how do these kind of come together? Because it's very interesting, like the cyber sandwich or the 8 parts of speech. Like, how does it fit into those, especially when we're looking at 3-year-olds, they're still trying to understand how to say, pronounce the letter D as duh, or
Right,
E for
right.
ass.
Well, what the way I like to say it is, you can do like when we design most of the protocols, we design them for like grade 4, 8, right?
Right.
And I'm going to go the other direction on you. What about an AP class? Well, in an AP class, it's a cyber sandwich is the same thing. I just scaffold it a little less. For example, you're an AP. You have to find an article that you think and you have to tell us why you can justify it, but it's still a cyber sandwich. When we move that down into primary where maybe they can't read. So then
Right.
in that grade level, I'll read the story to you and maybe you write a sentence about something that struck you during the story or something that was important and think something that happened to the main character or do a beginning middle end. So again, using that Venn diagram, what does a Venn diagram always got to have? It's got to have this, this, and what's in common. Well, in EduProtocols you can do that with pictures. You don't even need words. And that's
Right.
the way we approach things. So like, here's a sketch and tell. If you see what Dominic Helmstetter is doing with sketch and tello, guess what? He's doing sketch and tell with high level high school kids. And I can walk into any kindergarten class on the planet and go like this, Ryan, who likes food? And they go, I like it. And then I can say, do you think you could draw it? And they are like, yeah, I can totally draw my favorite food. And then I go, okay, here we go. So draw your favorite food, but don't tell anybody anything yet. And then what happens is I say, now tell your friends about your picture. And then think about the most important thing you told your friend and be ready to tell me. Boom, right into sketch and tell with people that can't even technically read and write. So it works out really good.
Yeah, and I even said on my book review just the other day too, when you were doing some of the pictures, like with the drawing things, and I said, with the finger types, like here's what you do for the color keyboard. One of the things I say is like, Tony Vincent's shapegrams. He does it where you do the finger keys, and you can actually do the exact same thing. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's a good
Exactly.
scaffolding there because the kids can draw. They can say, oh yeah, my little finger is supposed to go in the Q and the Z key. Oh hey, yeah, that's the color of this. Hey, that's the same color as the finger. Maybe I can represent those colors in drawing, and I'm understanding my keyboards a little bit on my
Yeah.
Chromebook or on this little classroom PC I have laying over here.
Well, and I read a quote. I don't know if it's a real quote. It was attributed to Socrates, and basically it said on the when this quote that I saw, it said, "Metaphor is the most important intelligence because it allows you to see the similarities between two different things." And you tell me if I'm wrong, Ryan. You've taught a lot of grade levels. If kids can't articulate what a metaphor is, if they have no name for that, it's going to slow down all their learning,
Mm-hmm.
right? Everything they're going to do is going to be slower because they live in a literal world where they don't understand the naming conventions for symbolism and metaphor. And so I think that's so critical because, like in EduProtocols, we love having kids answer with a meme or a GIF and then a statement. Why? Why is this the right meme or GIF? And man, that was one of my favorite things about going back to the classroom was when I went back and the amount of meme and GIF activity now is so stunning for helping to see and prove with kids that they understand things. It's so powerful and so creative.
But yeah, believe it or not, one of my college professors, as I was finishing my doctorate, I had to take this one thing, but he himself was very huge in memes. He was teaching us,
Mhm.
us graduate students. I mean, there was nobody under the age of 30. Well, maybe there was a couple under
Well,
age 30, but he
to your point, I've got a cyber sandwich on the history of memes. You should do it with your business kids. It's amazing. Memes go back to ancient Rome.
oh, I know my one history teacher here, Mr. Moore, and he knows he does the memes. They do art drawings on so he actually has them go to the board and they actually draw the characters that relate to whatever they are
Mhm.
in history right now. So they actually did like the Vikings and the Persians, and they drew them as grapes, and the other ones as apples, and they were at war and
Exactly.
over the
But
water.
see, you
It was
walked right into my trap, which is this. If kids can use grapes and raisins as a metaphor for their understanding instead of A, B, C, D,
right.
or use a word from the word bank, it's a totally different vibe for the kids. A totally different vibe.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, I just recently just did a nacho paragraph, and then you saw it on my thing. We're talking about the little free
Mhm.
library, but it was bringing
Yeah.
in business law because, like I said,
Mhm.
we're starting that unit too, that local law versus state law versus national
Mhm.
law. And I said,
Which
what it
most
is?
teenagers are not super excited about, but if you can
No,
do it with Number Mania or with memes or with GIFs or Sketch and Tello, that's their sweet spot. They're sharing their creative knowledge of what they're learning. So, I love it. I
yeah,
love
I
what
mean, my instructional coach, who's also the AP World Gov teacher, she loves using that stuff. She on the Edgy protocol, she grabbed it, went right into those cyber sandwiches. She loved putting those cyber
That's
sandwiches
awesome.
together. And
And what's your workload? You just really need a link.
right.
You're gone.
I mean, it is a link. I mean, it's amazing how much it did. Like we did Freyr cards. I've been using Freyr cards here as one of the big things. We did
Oh,
college
yeah.
jobs. So I put blue collar job, yellow collar job, virtual collar job. And I was like, now give me the example. Now give me a sentence. Now give me a picture or a GIF, and then use it
And
in a sentence.
how about this? It's nearly impossible to cheat on that. And here's
It
why.
is.
Even if you were using AI to answer the questions, you've still got to pose the question and make sure it's right. And I think that's very, very different than ready. This is us in 8th grade, Ryan. Ready? Hey, I have the worksheet for next week. You want the answers? I'll trade you
Yep.
$30 of Roblox. You can't do that on a Freyr because it doesn't work
No.
like that.
No, and it really does. The same thing when I put in the group areas for the cyber sandwich, like you're one, what did you get out of it? What did you get out of it? I had one, I have one person, he's interested in being a lawyer. So, he looks at more of the law one. It's like he's a game player, but he's like, oh yeah, but I see what they're talking about over here about why those had to change because of that versus, well, now there's more, little free libraries like this, or it's like, well, we're talking about geocaches. You can't just say, I want to drop a geocache in my neighbor's front yard. It'll be like, what's this doing here? It's my property. But it's like, but if you do the open area and it's registered, it's like, oh, wait, that's open-ended. That's registered. As long as it's being taken care of legally, that can exist there and people can go find them. It's very interesting how that promises. And speaking of that, I had a very interesting guest a couple weeks ago, our buddy Tisha Richmond, and
Oh
she
yeah.
was talking about this next companion guide that came out in the digital format here. So this one here, the EduProtocols 11 way to use things designed with Canva, and I'm getting myself a copy here very soon because I actually have a little bit of a Canva Kindle because I don't do a lot of digital. I do like to do my books still. I like the taper. I like to do everything else. But how does the the Canva, this companion guide really fits into the other ones of the previous ones, and how could it even work in the current release here with the TK through 2?
Well, for what we did was the first book, book one. We've had that book out. Gosh, I think it's a little over 5.5 years, which is crazy. And we've moved the state of the art down the line on this, and we've got new stuff. So anybody that buys book one that might be like, "Hey, this is really cool." These are all new super templates that go with the book. Okay, so for example, you probably have seen Frey or a Friend. Guess what you'll
Mhm.
get in this? You'll get the Frey or Friend Group Edition. And
Ah,
you've done Freyers, but guess what we have in here? Two different versions of Word Up Wednesday, and we made them in Canvas because Canva is so beautiful. But then you can just go boom, download a drive, and you're good for that or Microsoft. So imagine that there's I think either 14 or 11 new templates in there, and so for 9.99, they can cut the cord from TPT one more way.
Yeah, I mean, and just so I know, we like, teachers pay teachers when we're talking about TPT, but it does get the point. I was actually, believe it or not, on the magical world, of Reddit, and they were on the teacher group, and he was saying, I think we've gotten too controlled to TPT to the point to where it's like we're spending more money on lessons. We could just do one or two and then up them, or we could do another template and move on. I said, that's a good point. I said, I do X, Y, and Z with EduProtocols. And they're like, oh yeah, I've said EduProtocols. I've been thinking about buying just the companion edition, but I'm like, well, there's also a couple groups out there you could just join to, and you can
Right.
start building right from there. It's like you don't need to make every single copy, or somebody made it for me. I get it. We're always on a crunch, always a time, and people know I like to work a week ahead, but
Mhm.
I can go right on here and I can adapt, rack and stack. I can do all
Yep.
that. It works very well.
Well, the year that I went back and taught 6th grade, I literally probably for 80% of the year, I could get the job done with around 8 Edge protocols. And there's
Mhm.
80, right? There were a few times that I did a few extra ones. Um, and that was just for, I wanted to see what was possible. But I could literally get through the year with about 8, which means 0% TPT, right? Literally don't need it at all. I know teachers that spend 40 or $50 a month, which honestly, it's not crazy to spend
No.
$40 to get your weekends back, right? But here's the problem with the TPT scenario. And there's some good stuff on there,
Oh
right?
yeah.
But the problem is TPT doesn't grade itself, and
No.
TPT doesn't tell you how to grade it. So at the end of the week, you still end up with a stack of stuff to grade. And with protocols, you don't. So that's one of those little subtleties.
Yeah, and I like the fact, I mean, especially in all the books, here they show you with, whether you're on Common Core, where, but it shows you where the checkpoints are. And I recently just got, 50 ways to engage, students with Google Apps from Alice Keeler, and Alice popped in things perfectly in there. And I said, yeah, I think that's one of the things people always worry about. I know a couple TPTs I did somewhere like, here's the rubric. I'm like, beautiful. That's what I need. And I can adapt it. And maybe I will throw a little AI just to update and say, hey, give me an update for high school. This one was designed for 7th grade. I need a freshman level rubric, update it, and that's great. And then sometimes you get the lesson, you're like, well, how do I grade this? Or I gotta
Yeah.
go through all this.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what do
Yeah.
I do versus something like a
Whereas
bookcatcha or
I'll give you a real clean example of that, and this is gonna blow some listeners' minds right here. Okay, so Latin roots. If you look up Latin roots on TPT, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of 40, 50, 60 page, really nice, nothing wrong with them except for one main thing. It's gonna take you all year. because guess what they're doing? They're giving the kids like 3 root words a week, and 3 times 30 is 90. There's about 120 root words. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Now, the way we're going to do that in protocols, because Jacob Carr has done it based on an experiment that I did. He gave his kids 116 Latin roots on day 1. And guess what? His sophomores got 50% right, and they were mad. They were like, "Hey, that wasn't fair." And he goes, "You guys, you got half right. It's the first day of school. What's the bad part?" And literally, within, I think before the end of September. So imagine starting school August 12th, right? September 15th, all the Latin roots are in.
Yep.
So he doesn't need a year's worth of packets, a year's worth of correcting packets. Wait, I'm going to get really nasty now. A year's worth of calling parents about undone packets.
Yeah. Something I understand there.
Now I'm going to get super positive. Guess what? If all of my kids know 100 Latin roots by mid-September, we hear people talking about equity. That's equity. Some kids are going to have Latin roots because of their family background or their parents' education level, and some kids aren't, which means some kids don't know the Latin roots until we get to where? 70% of the year, which means I've denied them access in a non in a way that wasn't purposeful. But the reality of it is, if you come to my 7th grade class and you can't name 40 or 50 Latin roots off the top of your head, right? Because that's the pretest.
Right.
I'm a participant in keeping you from the stuff only because I want to do 3 a week.
Right. And that makes sense too. I mean, one thing I did here is I
Yeah.
did a sketch and tell, and I list 15 of the most common laws and 15 of the things that you need to know. And it's also
Yeah.
stuff they'll be learning over in
Yeah.
history. It doesn't matter if they're taking basics, world, or
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. That's
whatever.
the great thing about teaching electives, by the way, is your baseline is nobody knows anything.
Right.
So there's no like gate students in a film class. There's how hard you work is the
Right.
only variable.
Exactly. And then, but I have them do the sketch and tell, and I said, pick 5 from each list. So like, no, five from each list.
Yeah.
And then the next day, and I still had a couple people that hadn't turned them in. I'm like, all right, we did our lesson, we did our thing, and then, all right, we're doing GimKit. I was like, okay, what are we doing GimKit? Where I was like, over our words. Let's see how you do. And sure enough, I parred them down. I was writing down in the grade book, like, and they're like, why'd I do so bad? I was like, well, your problem is you were only at 10%. Everybody who had finished it or at least got through 3 of those words on each section,
Rock the house.
they got 80 or higher. So
Yep.
it's like everybody else is maybe, and how I put that in, because I'm like, I'll do it out of the score 10 over 10. And then all of a sudden it's like only 3 of you are below a 40. Everybody else is 80 or higher. And I had 2 kids that I always know will do it, rocked it, because
exactly.
And one of them was
and we see that
for 3 days.
And we see that even better, right?
Yeah.
And we see this phenomena over and over again. So here's what happened to me, Ryan. I don't know if you know this story, but I was teaching 6th grade 3 years ago, and I was teacher tired. It was like Friday at 2, and I was like, bro, I got nothing. And I'm pretty energetic, but I'm like, I got nothing.
Right.
So I literally went on to GimKit and I found a Spanish word, Spanish foods, jamon, naranja, mantequilla, what's that? Manzanilla, desayuna, all those kinds of words like that. And I got a class that's all English speakers, and I'm like, let's have some fun. So there they go, GimKit, Spanish words, Spanish foods, and the kids start playing, and they're like, how are we supposed to know these? I go, watch. When you get a wrong answer, write it down. No, they're like, okay. One kid goes, hey, Corippo, you gave us 134 words, and I was like, I thought it said 13, dude. I did not see the 4. Total accident.
Right.
Total accident. Well, we played for about 8 or 10 minutes, and then the bell rang and it was time to go home. Well, about 3 days later, I go, you guys want to try that again? And they're like, okay, we're gamers. Why not? Ryan, the first round, they got 11%.
Wow. Yeah. So terms
Everybody. That was the class average, right? There were lower than 11. And second time, we're like 26. So we come back 3-4 more days later, 41. We come back a few days later, 67. We come back a few days later, 78. We come back a few days later, 87. I'm like, let's go boss battle. Who can beat me?
Exactly.
And guess what? They took me down 92% right on 134 Spanish foods, this many lectures, this many crosswords, this many packets. All we did was enjoy playing the game and getting immediate feedback. And then here's the wrinkle, and I think you pointed it out too. At some point, you got to get the kids to take it personally because if they're
Right.
just clicking, but you got to make them buy in, whether you're going to shave your head or buy them little Debbie's or shave your face in
I
your
got
case.
my mini candies in my big
Right,
candy
right.
bar, and it's sitting
You
there
gotta
free.
you gotta juice it a little bit so they'll actually try. But man, I'm sitting there on the last day and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I've been teaching Latin roots wrong for 18 years." And so I told Jake that story, and that was Jake comes right out of the gate. Boom, 116 Latin roots the first day. So that really got me thinking, like, what's possible speed wise? And tell me, Ryan, if you're on TikTok, I believe you are. Um,
No, actually, I'm a lurker. I was a lurker.
oh, okay, but you're watching the teachers, right?
Yes, I am
Um,
watching. I'm not saying I'm
so
not watching them. Yes.
so many teachers complaining about kids, and it's a paradox to me because I think the kids are actually bored. I think all the behaviors that the teachers are seeing is boredom. They're not rejecting learning, they're not rejecting what they're rejecting is the plan we have for them. The plan we have for them is unengaging. And again, I think you gave a great little vignette. Like, how many people are excited about 15 laws? But
Right.
when you put it in Sketch and Tello, and your job is to use memes or GIFs or Pokemon characters to illustrate each one, they all turn into like this little mad scientist. Look at this, Reed. Look at what I got going on here.
That does sound
And
like one of my classes right there.
yeah, and that's the piece that you don't get if you're standing at the front of the room telling everybody, "This is the right answer. You did not put the right answer." Nobody wants to live in that environment. It's called office space.
Right.
It's not fun, and, kids have figured that out, and I think that almost all the behavior problems we're seeing are have that boredom at their root. Yeah, are there kids that are over the top? Yeah,
Yeah.
but most of it is boredom. Most of it is they're just the reason they're picking up their phones is because if you tell them you got 45 minutes to write a paragraph, they're going to cruise the phone for 31 minutes and then crank out that paragraph in the last 10 or 11.
That's not too much off the it's very interesting how it is. It's like I do see it. Like I mean, they always have outliers. I mean,
Yeah,
like
there's always
even
outliers.
best teachers will have that students is like, yeah,
Yep.
I don't care. I really just don't. And no matter what
Mhm.
you do, I'm not going to do it. It's like, well, okay then, but I'm still gonna have you participate. But I'll
Right.
leave the rest up to you. Whether that means passing my class or not, well, that's on you, not me.
Well, and I want to give you a little secret sauce on that because when I go around and travel all these classrooms, over 750 in the last 3 years in 5 states and 5 countries. First of all, I don't have that problem. The teachers are always like, "That kid never does anything. He just wrote a paragraph." And I'm like, "Bro, it could be the way you're presenting it." But the
Sure.
second one that happens is when I do run into the very small amount of kids that don't respond to my style. Here's what I say to the teacher. I'm going to say it to you right now, Ryan, teacher to teacher. How many times have you talked to the parents?
Right.
And you know what the teacher says 98% of the time? Well, I emailed them, but they didn't answer. You have got to close the deal.
Right.
And you can't email them. They won't answer that. And you can't leave them a voicemail. The number one thing that works is text them. This is Mr. Reed. Your son hasn't done anything. It's the third day of school. And then the way I usually take it after that, Ryan, is this new or is this something that's going to go on all year?
Right.
And I will tell you, in my experience, 80 to 85% of the time, the vast majority of the time, the parent says, "Hell no. What is he thinking? I am going to park that PlayStation. Thank you for letting me know." Right? Now, I had at my school, I had one parent that was completely unresponsive with a kid who wouldn't show up on Zoom at all. And it was ironic because she worked in our cafeteria, but she said she was still unresponsive. So with the few kids that don't respond to the parent connection, which by the way, you got to do it like the first or second day. Teachers think this, and I've done it, Ryan. Oh, I'm going to give those parents they're going to get piece of my mind at the parent teacher conference. The problem is when you start getting a sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, those kids go home every night and say, "Mr. Reed doesn't teach us anything. That's why I have a bad grade." And so by the time mom and dad show up at the parent conference, they have a wheelbarrow of crap to dump on you. So what
Mhm.
I do is I get right into there. Second day of school, first day of school. Is this normal? What are your expectations? And again, most of the time their parents are like, "Oh my god, I love you. This is going to be a great year." Because they're fighting that same behavior at home a lot of times. If the parent doesn't answer, and I'm sure you know this term because you're a legal guy, in loco parentis doesn't mean I can punish them like I'm their parent. In
Right.
loco parentis means they belong to me. They're my responsibility in the absence of their parent. So then, with some kids, it's bringing them a Starbucks on Friday. With some kids, it's Roblox. I have got to build that bridge myself between me and the child. And here's why I'm adamant about that. A, that kid deserves that, right? They deserve that. Second, um, that child doesn't know better. It's my job to grow them out of that. And then the third one is if I don't fix him, there'll be two kids not working. And once there's
That's true.
two kids not working, there'll be four kids not working. And by Christmas, it is not pretty. So I'm fixing him for a myriad of good reasons that all benefit me. um, better working class, better academic achievement. And guess what, Ryan? One of those kids, one of my former students, he owns four businesses now. He makes around 40,000 a month, and he's my friend. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there absolutely is not. I have to say I have a few success stories I still talk
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
other ones. I have one who joined the Air Force and he wanted to play. He got the job. He came back up. He joined the power plant he wanted to be as the engineer, and that's where he is now. And that's one
Yeah.
of those are like, you want to
And
see one of
and
my
there
best success stories?
and
Go talk to him.
yeah, and academics matter, but what you just described is for me is the ideal situation. Economically successful, well-adjusted adult is the ultimate victory. Um,
Right.
I don't care if they pass the state test when they're 35. What I care about is what's the end game. Do I want them to do well in the state test? Well, yeah, it's a form of measurement. So yeah, I do. Um, but the bigger picture is where are we going with this as the rest of your life? So, okay, I think we need to kind of wrap up now. Any
I
other,
think,
you want
I
to do a
think,
quick round, a fire round?
yeah, let's try a thing. So, we got the EduProtocols Plus. Why EduProtocols Plus? Yeah.
Well, as you know, I'm pretty famous for free lifetime tech support. But
Exactly.
in plus, what we've done, and we have not done a good job of advertising this. Ryan, I believe it's 279. Yeah, it's
Yep.
279.
Got on the
That's that is for your whole life.
Yeah, I know, and it's not like you gotta pay this every year. This is
No,
your whole
no,
time.
and you can do monthly payments to get the 279 in, but we think it's a really different approach to PD, which is number one price for the rest of your educational life. Two, we're dropping new protocols, usually two a month, every month for the rest of your life. Compare that to your TPT budget.
Yep.
We've got, I think, 9 different shows that happen monthly with people like Kim Vogie, Jacob Carr, Lisa Nowakowski, and Jeremiah Roosh, the Math Reps team, the history team. So you get like author access to work with them every month, half-hour show. And if you can't catch the show, you can watch it. We've got self-paced courses in there. So, like, if you've bought the book and you're like, this is really cool, we have courses where you can go through and actually get units. And if you're a younger teacher listening to this, here's the way this works, you guys. 5 units is 5,000 bucks.
Yep.
That's the math.
That
That's
is
the math. You get 5 units. That moves you up a step. Okay, so where's the cheapest place to get the units? 279, and then you can pick any classes you want in there. And again, it's a lifetime price. And then the other thing that's cool, Ryan, is we do 2 events a year that will be totally free. We do the Catalina Lesson Mixer, and we do the Edge Protocols Worldwide. Those are both free for the rest of their lives. And then we have 4 summer events coming up this year. Austin, Texas, Birmingham, Alabama, Notre Dame University, and Laguna Beach. They get $200 off every year for the rest of their lives for that event. So for principals and school districts, it's the same deal for them, by the way. And when we do this with school districts, every teacher they get a book as well and a discount on PD from us. So, I mean, it's not like insanely different than normal. It's not like iPhone versus flip phone,
Right.
but it's the offerings are those are things that a lot of people have, but nobody does 279 for the rest of your life.
No,
And
I agree, and that's a great deal to get it. And I mean, I'm planning to get it with what's left of my classroom budget because there's not a lot of people listening. John and I, of course, know about for me, especially taking EduProtocols. It's definitely saying where I'm going in the future. I'm
yeah,
definitely
and I
going to
mean,
do that.
if you have 10 years left to go in your career, that's I believe 120 months. Let's do 279 divided by 120. This is going to be a small number.
Here's our
Uh,
numerology lesson
it's
right now.
it's $2.30 a month. That's
Exactly.
That's like 1 TPT for every month, not counting the discounts, the free stuff, and the access. So,
That's less than a comic book a week.
yeah, remember when comic books were a quarter too? That's
Oh,
how old I am.
yeah, I know. It was a long story on that. We don't have a lot of time to go into that. But I remember when I was like, "Oh, go to the corner store. I got my quarter, Mom. Let's watch
Got my quarter.
Reformers of Spider-Man."
There you go.
All right, John. Thank you so much for being back on here and giving your time for it. I know we were really working to get this up, and luckily we got the schedule working here, and of course, an hour earlier than we were planning too.
And your internet worked.
I know. That calls for the shout out right there. Hold on.
Ding, 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 ding.
There we go.
There you go.
We got it. We got it. It's been a while since I did the horn, especially in the new studio setup. Everybody else, thank you so much for joining us here on the Pixel Classroom Podcast. And also thank you for those who join us on the Teach Better Network. And we will talk to everyone later.